A handful of minnows and an occasional squirrel won't replace the hamburger as an Epicurean delight for the American boy. But 4 Eleanor youths found that such fare enabled them to subsist for 6 days in the wooded Beech area of Putnam County earlier this month. The 4 weren't lost. They just decided to see if they could survive by living off the land for a few days. They were Mike Carr, 20, Mike Farley, 21, Junior Lewis, 18, and Ronnie Walker, 17. "We learned a lot," Lewis said. "You kind of got the feeling of how everybody felt back in the pioneer days." The youths took no food for their excursion, but they did have 4 shotguns, sleeping bags, an axe, knives, minnow traps, game traps, small survival kits with waterproof matches, and a pan to cook in. The campsite, which they had already selected, was near a small creek, and the first day the boys gathered firewood, built a lean-to out of branches, and boiled up a pot of minnows. "It wasn't a very good meal, but that was all we had," Carr recalled. The 4 soon learned that the minnows tasted somewhat better if they were roasted rather than boiled, but even so, Lewis said, you would take 1 bite and spit out 10. The youths, who know their way around a woods, only managed to shoot about 8 or 9 squirrels and the 1 grouse to supplement their protein diet of minnows. They hadn't counted on the leaves being off the trees and the squirrels being able to watch them stalk. It was a couple of days before the boys bagged a squirrel. "We killed 4 or 5 squirrels in 1 day, and we ate them all in 1 day, Carr said. This feast was served, though, without benefit of salt or other seasoning. If Mother Nature didn't provide it, the boys were determined not to have it. We really weren't expecting it to be that hard to find something to eat," he added. Farley agreed. "We didn't realize what was happening for the first several days." The youths also discovered some fallen apples that were in pretty good shape, and they became one of our main courses, Carr said. They experimented with soup once, using some greens and boiling them with the squirrel bones. "I don't think Campbell's will ever ask for that recipe," Carr said. The days assumed a routine. The youths got up around dawn, foraged for firewood, and then started hunting. They found the best time to shoot the squirrels was toward evening, when the squirrels couldn't see them as easily. But sometimes that meant lurking near a likely tree for practically all the daylight hours. "The main thing is just to keep calm," Walker said. "If you hurry, you just can't get it done. All you can do is sit there all day." Later in the week, Farley managed to shoot a grouse, and that was delicious, he said. The boys blamed the foxes they heard at night around the campfire for getting the small game they had hoped to supplement their diet with. One thing they all agreed on was the next time they'll take rifles rather than shotguns, so they can shoot some small birds and ground squirrels. They weren't plagued by cold weather, since the temperatures only dipped into the 20s at night, but it was a little chilly for baths. Carr and Walker made 1 attempt, but got no farther than their heads. "When the water hit my head, I about passed out. It was cold," Carr said. They soon gave up bothering to boil the water for drinking and suffered no ill effects. "The water was better than it is in town," Carr said. "It just tasted better." The youths turned in early at night, but did play some cards and sang a few songs to while away the time. "If you ever heard 4 bullfrogs, that was us," Carr said, but there was no one around to criticize the quality of their singing. Farley's grandfather happened by the campsite midweek to check on the campers, but returned when he learned they were all right. No one mentioned giving up the project, even though all the youths admitted to being hungry, hungrier than they expected they would be. "The thing we missed most was the ham sandwiches we had just before we came out," Walker said. "It seemed like we could taste them all week." The 4, who had grown up together, said they managed to keep their tempers. "In the whole time, I don't think anyone flew up and got mad," Carr said. "We pretty well kept it under control. We knew that if this was going to work, we would have to depend on each other, not just on yourself." They feel they could have carried on for a longer time, but they accomplished their goal, only a little worse for the wear. Carr lost about 20 pounds from his 200-pound frame. Farley dropped about 7 pounds, down to 153. Walker lost about 15 pounds, and Lewis about 5 or 6. And Carr said, We looked like a bunch of animals when we got home. Their families had cooked up a big meal for them, but Carr and Lewis found they couldn't eat anything at first. But now they're back to normal. Having mastered the forest, the boys are now planning another project this summer. They hope to build a raft and float down the Ohio River to the Mississippi. Farley seemed to speak for the others when he said, "I'm looking forward to our next adventure."